So what is data migration? So data migration is basically a concept in SAP which actually handles the uh, data data movement from non-SAP systems to SAP systems. Let's say we have data in non-SAP system, and this has to come into SAP system. There are many scenarios where we have to use this. Let's say, suppose if let's say a company was using Java system before we get it, and then they launched into, they now got this SAP system. Okay, so they are moving from Java system to SAP system. Let's say we have moved from Java to SAP system. uh, what will happen here is, like, we have to actually get this all data which is there. For example, the customer data is there, or vendor data is there, employee data. So these all data have to be moved from this Java system to SAP system, and this cannot happen immediately. I mean, like, you cannot manually enter also. Manually entering this much of data is also not feasible. So what we basically have here is that we are going to automate the process of loading the data. So what we do is, we basically have a very simple concept of downloading the data. So we'll always tell them to get that data into a file, as kind of a flat file kind of thing, and then we move that file data into the SAP system. So it's pretty easy. So this concept of moving the data from external systems to SAP system is called data migration. And data migration can happen in many different scenarios as well. For example, let's say you have the company, the organization is running in 14 different countries, and you want to consolidate everything into one system. Then we need data migration. Or maybe you are moving from old system to new system, or there are some scenarios like this. Or if let's say a part of it is working on SAP, a part of it is working on non-SAP. Let's say you have swiping machines, right, where you swipe your access card and get into the office, get into the get inside the office. So that swiping details will actually be stored in some other software. Now that swiping details have to be uploaded into SAP, then that is something which has to be done on a daily basis. So this also can come under the data migration, because, and this data migration happens every day. Okay, this is what we have. So this is what we have. Okay, and there are various techniques that we use for data migration. So initially, at the very beginning, and what we actually do for this data migration is, we'll write a logic, we'll write a code, okay, we'll write a program. Okay, we'll write a program, and then that program, when you run it, automatically the program itself will pick the data from outside and put it into the SAP system. So these all things can happen with the program itself. But it's not just the program that is going to do that process. So there are various other things also that can actually make our data migration be possible. First one is the BDC. BDC stands for Batch Data Communication. And then we have this LSMW, Legacy System Migration Workbench. And then we have this BAPI, Business Application Programming Interface. Then we have direct input method. So we have got this direct input method. So BDC, LSMW, BAPI, direct input method, these all are the different types of techniques that we have to migrate the data from non-SAP systems to SAP system. This is what we have. Now, direct input method is a very straight method wherein, let's say, SAP identifies that. Okay, SAP identifies that. Let's say we have identified that there is some data which has to be done from brought from some external system to a standard MM01 transaction. So for MM01 transaction material creation, there is already a standard transaction code MM01, right? So for the standard transaction codes, SAP very clearly knows that this data has to be migrated from outside. Then they will by default give you a standard transaction code, which standard program, a standard program, which actually when you run this standard program, automatically the data can be loaded. So you don't have to do anything in this. You don't have to do development in it. You just have to take it from outside and bring it. You just have to know the program name and execute it. That's it. But in the BDC programs, it's not like that. You're going to write everything from the scratch. You're going to build it from the scratch. So in this we have the call transaction method, and then we have the session method. Call transaction method and session method. So these are the two different methods that we have: call transaction method and session method. These two type of call transaction method and session method will be taking care of that. So they will be loading it. These are the two steps that we have. Okay, so when do we go for call transaction method and when do we go for session method? We'll understand that. But these are the various methods that we have. In batch data communication, we have call transaction method, session method, and LSNW was basically designed for functional consultants. So if you observe and see and do LSNW program, it will not have any coding. Just one step that we have coding. Rest of all the things will be drag and drop kind of a thing. So it's more of like anyone even without programming knowledge also can go ahead and do the LSNW. They can design the LSNW and do it. These are the various processes that we have for data migration. So the first and foremost is what we'll do is we'll go ahead with this call transaction method. We'll do one scenario on it. All these concepts we'll do one scenario so that we can get an understanding and idea about it. Fine. So now what we'll do is we will first concentrate on getting the data from non-SAP systems to our SAP system. So non-SAP system, as I told you, from non-SAP system, the data will first, the recommended concept process is that from non-SAP system, we call this non-SAP system as legacy system. So from legacy system to our SAP system. From legacy system to our SAP system, what exactly is the process that we have is legacy system is the non-SAP system, right? So in this, from there, if you want to get the data, the first process is to get the data from that non-SAP to flat file. Now, what is a flat file? It can be anything, like it can be a notepad, wordpad, or Excel sheet. These all come under the flat file. So getting the data from the flat file, we will get it into internal table. We'll first get the data from the flat file to internal table, and from the internal table, we'll get the data into the screens. As you all know, which we have discussed earlier, that any SAP standard transaction, you have to enter the data manually. You cannot directly update the data in the Mara table. You have to do it through MM01. In the past also, if you have to fill the data into a particular table, we have done it through the transaction. You cannot do it upload directly into database table. So obviously here that MM01 is what I'm talking about, that screens. When I say screens, then once it's saved in the screens, it goes in and sits in the database tables. So this is the process that we are going to follow. Now first what we'll do is we will go ahead and understand the process of getting the data from flat file to internal table. Okay, so once we get the data from the flat file to internal table, after that we can go ahead and go to the further next step to get the data from internal table to screens. So let's do that now. So here I'm creating a flat file with some details, like I already have a flat file which I created in the past, which I can we can make use of. So it's like basically I'm writing something like A1234. This is a flat file which I'm preparing for MK01 transaction, and we can also do it for MM01 as well. Okay, so let me show you the flat file. So what we'll do is the flat file will have something like this, and there is a field after the tab 001 tab 001 tab. So in this way we have we'll be having this kind of a tab in between the fields. Field to field will have a tab. In between field to field we have a tab, and the next data will be there in the 1235, something like this. This is what we have in the flat file. Okay, so I'm using this file A1234x, and these are the values that I've given. Material number and the details which are required for that MM01 transaction are here. So what we are going to do is we are going to first bring this data from the flat file to internal table. How do we do that? How do we get this data from a flat file? That's a notepad file, is also a flat file, right? So how do we get this data in from this flat file into our SAP system, into the internal table is what is the question. So let's do a quick simple program which actually brings up this data from this from this particular flat file into our internal table. So first and foremost is we have to log in into the SAP system, and then we need to explore that MM01 transaction code. So in this MM01 transaction code, whatever is required is already there in the flat file. So in the flat file, we have something like a material number, an industry type, and material type. So when we have this industry number, I'll give something like A1234. Then industry, I'll give it as, we have to select from the drop down. So I'll go for retail, and here I'll go for something like additionals or something, and enter. Okay, so it's already there, it seems. And now I'll go for 9-1. So we have got this basic data, and say okay. Now if you observe here, what we are giving is retail and additionals, but internally it will save something like this, okay, to ZMDG. And how do we find it out? I'll explain you about that. How do you find out what is actually being stored? In the display it will show like this, but this will be shown in the back. So we have, say, something like SHA. Then we have this is PC. PC means piece, means single piece or something like that. You can also have the base unit of measure as kg, meters, liters, or something like that. Now what we do is before we upload, we first will check whether the data which is given in the flat file is same as what we have. Will it complement? Okay, so the process here would be to get this data from the flat file to internal table. From the internal table, we'll have a loop, and we will, every given point of time, every time it runs, the program runs. The program will go and read one record at a time from internal table to work area, and that will be fed into the screens. And the screens, whatever data we feed in the screen automatically, will get loaded into the internal database tables. That's the process that we have. So it automatically happens. Get the data from the flat file to internal table, and then from internal table to screens, and screens to database tables. So let's now build a program which actually gets this data from the flat file to our internal table. First, let's understand the first step. The first step is to get the data from flat file to internal table. So when you see this, when I click F1, in some cases we have to click F1, function F1. You catch hold of function button on your screen and then click F1, and you will get this technical settings of this. So if you see the technical settings, the field name is MATNR and the data element name is also MATNR. So this is how we find it out. But what exactly is the property of it? So what I'll do right now is I'll close this and I'll write the first field as MATNR. Type MATNR. Then let's see the second one. I'm keeping the cursor on the second one. Click function F1 and you'll get the technical settings. And in this we have the field name is MBRSH and data element name is also MBRSH. So MBRSH is the field name and data element also. So I'll go with, now I'll go for MBRSH. So MBRSH, type MBRSH. Then the third one, third field, I'm keeping the cursor on the third field, clicking F1 function key and click on the technical settings, and here we'll have this details as MTART. So I'll go for MTART now. So, MTART. Then basic data, okay, already maintained 92 basic data. This also will be captured. Okay, now MBR. Now here we have something like I give it a shaft, right? So I'll give it as something like whatever. So function F1. So we'll go for technical settings here, and in this we'll have MAKTX. This is MAKTX. MAKTX. Then the unit of measure. This is also mandatory. So unit of measure, the field name is MEINS. If you can see here, this is field name is MEINS. So MEINS, and let's do that now. Let's go ahead and create the field for MEINS. So MEINS, type MEINS. Okay. Now these are the fields that we have imbibed here, and data IT underscore mm01, type standard table of st underscore mm01, w underscore mm01, type st underscore mm01. Now we have to, now there is no select options or selection screen required. Here we have to click on this pattern and go for GUI underscore upload. GUI underscore upload will bring the data from the flat file to our internal table. So here in the file name, I will give this file name as, it is there in the D drive colon mm01.txt. This is the file name, and American Standard Code, and field separator is hash, because between the field to field I gave the separator as tab. So if you give the field separator as tab, you have to give hash here, and then we have to go ahead with here IT underscore mm01. Okay, so here we have this. Now that's it. So we will get the data from this flat file into this internal table, and the field separator between the fields is hash. Now let's write a program here. This program is just to see if the data has been uploaded properly into the internal table at IT underscore mm01 to w underscore mm01. Look, right, w underscore mm01 hyphen matnr. hyphen those field names like MBRSH. So allow, and okay, we've got some message there, but ultimately this is the data that we have. I think we've got the data from first, second, third, fourth row, but after that something is missing. So I think the shaft has been done. PC and PC is actually the base unit of measure. So unit of measure is here, and then 08 is something like we have given some other name. So I think till shafts it picked up well, but this PC has to be there in the base unit of measure. Yeah, base unit of measure is not getting picked up there. Maybe I have to change that to maybe capital letters. Okay, we have got the PC, and something else is missing here. Let's see that. Okay, so because I have measured, I have given 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fields only. Only for 5 fields we are getting the data from the flat file. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And from here we'll take it forward, and we'll see how to get this data into the screens and how to we store it in the database tables, standard database tables. So this happens to be the step one. And once you practice this, we can go ahead with the next one.